Hello, everyone. Have we started? Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. You here in the room, it's so great to see you. And everyone at home, this is being recorded, so don't shout anything unless it's in context. I am so happy to have you all here with me. I've gotten the pleasure to spend the entire day with Jerry Craft here, and it's a treat. You're in for an absolute treat. Housekeeping, my name's Cliff. I'm the children's department at Left Bank Books. If you don't come down every day, start coming down every day tomorrow. I'm always there. I'm very happy to chat with you about books, kids' books only. Only talk to you about kids' books. If you are not familiar with our events, we have a full listing on our website, left-bank.com. I want to send appreciation to all of you for coming out. I love it when people shop locally and with independent bookstores. It is the only way that my kid is fed. So I appreciate you all. And here with me, Jerry Craft. Let's go. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been, I'll give you that, okay, because you're the important one. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so overjoyed to be able to do this. My son is in 8th grade now, and he and I found New Kid at exactly the same time. And it was one of the first books that we both read and absolutely enjoyed. And he just really sunk his teeth into, reach the last page, flip it over, start again. And it's an absolute joy to sell it too, as a bookseller. It's the book that every kid knows when they come in, they recognize it. It's fantastic. So thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
So I got to see you in action at several school events that we did earlier, and it is.
We signed 5,000 books.
Yes, we did. I have no idea how he has the wrist flexibility.
I do push-ups with 2 fingers, just to kind of warm up, Yeah,
absolutely. So let's get into it. We're gonna chat today.
Well, I want to thank you as an indie bookseller. And I always, whenever I go on tour, part of my stipulation is that the school or whatever it is has to go through an indie bookseller. And even people who, are anti-New Kid, and I get some hate mail, I'm gonna burn your book. I'm like, well, please at least buy it from an independent bookseller. And then burn it, because then your dollars really matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They go to a purpose.
Right.
Well, so let's get into it. How does it feel to have a book that is
Let me just cut it short.
No.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're over time.
How does it feel to have a book that is so wonderful, but relatively innocuous, be banned so heavily? Why are people against your book, and how does that feel? How do you interact with that?
If I had sat down to do that for a purpose, and it's my whole life, I met someone yesterday who's doing a documentary on Art Spiegelman, and they wanted me to be a part of it. And I remember meeting Art Spiegelman. So as you've heard me tell all the kids today, I was not a reader as a kid. So most times when I met authors, I didn't know who they were until I looked them up after the fact, right? So I was working at King Features, and I did a radio show with Art Spiegelman, Stan Mack, and Mark Alsterman. And they were all talking about how their editors were always like, tone it down, tone it down, tone it down. And they're like, Jerry, don't you get the same thing? I'm like, no, my editors always like, hey, curse and be
Ratchet
bad.
it up, yeah.
Right, be bad, be angry. I'm like, that's not what I do. You know, so if I had spent a whole career of doing that, then I said, okay, this is finally caught up to me. But I've made a living like, you know, writing books that I thought were wholesome. Even with New Kid, when it came out, there was a Christian website that did review, and I really do read all my reviews, even though people tell me not to. And I read it, and it was like, content 5 out of 5, humor 5 out of 5, language 4 out of 5. And I was like, language? Huh. And I read it, and they didn't like the fact that I said OMG.
Jesus Christ.
See, now you just get 3 out of 5. You get 2 demerits right there. But so here's the thing. It's not that big a deal. Like, it wasn't that crucial to my overall thing. And I said, you know what? In class act, I'm gonna change the oh my goodness. Because if one more kid could read it, because their parent is like, okay, now it's, you know.
Yeah, now it's 5 out of 5 across the board.
Right, now it's 5 out of 5. So I've always done that. So to then end up talking to Don Lemon or Joy Reid and Art Spiegelman 20 years after I met them, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna be on it with who? Like Art Spiegelman, who did Mouse. I'm like, Mouse, New Kid. Mouse, New Kid. And then the following week, I did something with Angie Thomas. I'm like, the hate you give, New Kid. The hate you give, New Kid. And then like 2 weeks ago, I always Google my name to see, because I just want to be, and it was like,
with fire.
Yeah,
all your reviews,
I
and
do.
Googling yourself.
and it was like, why the GOPers fear Jerry Kraft's cartoons. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then like, the next week my Twitter got hacked and all that stuff. And it's like, wow. And then I got an email like, oh, you have a severe mental illness. The fact that you are trying to indoctrinate a whole generation of kids. Like, that's right. I'm not going to stop until every kid in America is kind and respectful. So there you have it.
Well, so what do they think that you are trying to impart on the youth?
On the youth? That I don't know.
Is it-
Like, so they throw around critical race theory, which I had to Google the first time because I didn't know. And then they said Marxism, which half the people that accuse me of being a Marxist don't know if that's based on the writings of Karl Marx, Harpo, or Groucho. They just hear these things. And like, I did a Daily Show last week, and one of the points I made was that there are people who think that graphic novel is a category. It's a novel that has graphic content. And that's a real thing. So they're like, I don't want my kids reading these novels with graphic content. Right, that's a real thing. So we have to talk slower. We have to explain. So like, I have to change the name to like, oh, buy Jerry Kraft's big old comic book.
Yeah.
But I'm stunned that like people are screaming at school boards and just stuff like that. Like, I'm bewildered.
Yeah, I'm against book bannings, just to put that out there. But on some level, I understand overprotective parents wanting to be the one to talk to their kid about the Holocaust, and so they don't just necessarily want them to jump into Maus without giving some context. To give them the biggest grade of or extend the olive branch. But I've read New Kid and Class Act and School Trip, and there's very little that there's nothing in there that my son hasn't experienced except the trip to Paris. But there's nothing that hasn't experienced.
Which now you're in the hook for, so please buy books today.
I have a trip to Paris.
But you know what upsets me is that as an African-American man in America, I felt like my whole life, like 80% of the books and movies that I read were about slavery, civil rights, gangs, and police.
Yeah, no lie. I many years ago gave up the slavery narrative, and,
Right.
and it's one of the best things I did.
And nobody protected us from that. Nobody said, oh, you know, young 12-year-old Jerry Craft is going to feel bad about, you know, like, and then when my sons were in middle school, and then the teachers would read, you know, Rosa Parks or something, but don't really explain it, then, and so there's no empathy. So it's like, okay, everyone, time to go to recess, and they turn to my son and say, you have to get in the back of the line, or you have to sit in the back of the bus. Like, that wasn't funny to my son, obviously.
Yeah.
So now when I write books about what it feels like to be that kid, so those are the books that get banned, not the ones like, why do I feel like I had to grow up to write New Kid? It's because those things, I wasn't protected in the same way.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I have long had trouble articulating the giving voice to that thought. But yeah, I appreciate you. My son has way more, like a wider variety of books, literature, graphic novels than I ever did.
Right.
Yeah, and so I thank you for it. I mean, and there are kids growing up now who also feel that they don't have that they aren't represented in the literature. And so is there anything specifically to them that you would say, anything that set you off on this path, or a piece of advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, what I always say, and this is rough, but it's one of those like, oh, wow. Like, if the only books that we had for girls, right? So if you're reading books to your daughters, right? And the only books were Handmaid's Tale. But think of that, because that's what, when I'm taking my kids to the movies, I'm like, hey, you want to go to the movies? Yeah, okay, let's see. We've got 12 Years a Slave. We've got Freedom Riders. We've got the help, the butler, the cook, the window washers. And I'm like, hey, who wants to go to the movies? No, you want to play Xbox? Like, me too. So that's why I put the Handmaid's Tale. Like, what does that do if that's all little girls had to read? What does that do to the little girls? What does that do to the little boys? And I just felt like we were just inundated with that stuff, and we're so, like, I was talking to someone yesterday, and with school trip, they like kind of cheated and looked at the back of the book to see like if everything was okay, because you probably do the same thing. You know that sooner or later something bad is going to happen.
Yes, you're waiting for the shoe.
You're waiting for the shoe to drop.
The tragedy.
Right, because like I feel like every Black book as a kid, every movie, like even if it was something fun, like, hey, we're going to be in the St. Louis cookie baking contest, and it's me and you, Grandma, right? And this is thing, and you're like, okay, so I'm waiting for it. Something bad's going to happen, and then they're cooking, and then the little girl takes the candle and puts it by the curtains, and you're like, here it goes. And next thing, right? And the house burns down, and and then the next scene, like Grandma's in the hospital with smoke inhalation, and the house is burned down, and she's sitting there, and just this little thing floats down, and she goes, it's Grandma's secret recipe for her chocolate chip cookies. I'm gonna do this. And then she does it, and then she wins. Hooray, and I'm like, that's not a happy ending. You know what I mean? And it's like those things that are just like, hey, happy ending, she won the $25 gift certificate to Popeyes. But meanwhile, the house is burned down, Grandma's on an iron lung. And it's like, how is that a happy story? And like, that's what we got over and over again. So that's why in New Kid, I had the whole thing with Grandpa. Like, oh, I miss Grandpa. Oh, I sure wish he was here. And you see like, well, Jordan, I moved on to a better place. And so you think, oh, his grandpa will come back to him during sad moments like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know. And it's like, I'm not dead, Jordan, I just moved to Yonkers. Because I knew that you would all be like, oh,
Play on that expectation.
play on that dread, like that we're accustomed. Oh, here we go. It's like, dude, just turn the light. Was that a blue light bulb in here? So, gotcha.
Yeah, excellent. So you've always been an artist, yeah. I've heard you say several times today that you've been drawing since you could pick up a pen. Was it all just like a creative outlet? Did you just have to draw? Is it a compulsion? Did you just have to get it out?
I still have to draw. Like, even like, so when we would go to restaurants, my kids were younger, and you know, you go to the ones where there's a paper tablecloth, and they go to the kids, oh, would you like crayons? Like, no. I'm like, yes, please. So, you know, the waitress comes back 10 minutes later, and there's like SpongeBob and Patrick and this whole underwater scene, and like, can I have this? You know, they rolled up the tablecloth and taking it home. I was always just like the kid that was always, I did pay attention at school, but always drawing.
So that didn't transfer to your kids. Your kids, are they not?
So I wrote
artistic in that
a
way?
book, you know, their like 6th grade teacher called me in one day and showed me their sketchbooks. I was like, oh, they did this? I was like, they're really good. But they just never really drew again. And I kept saying, I'm not gonna, you know, force them, and one day they're gonna just be like, and 12 years later, I'm still waiting. But the new 3-book series I'm working on, my oldest son is kind of on my team. And so we're working together with that. So
That's very cute. Yeah. Were they always readers? Did they really did like to read?
I made sure that they were readers because I read to them every day. I actually read more as a dad than I read my whole life as a kid and single person. So I read them Dr. Seuss, and then Captain Underpants, and then I started going back to the classics that I was like, oh wow, Wizard of Oz is a book. You know, and like Wizard of Oz and Charlotte's Web and all the ones that I missed out on. And then Holes. And then Holes was cool because it had this little brown sticker on the cover. So I liked it, and I went back and I was like, hey, to the librarian, you have any one of these books with the little brown stickers on? Because they're pretty good. She gave me Bud That Buddy that had 2 stickers on it. And I'm like, oh, these sticker books are cool. I didn't know what they were. And so we started reading the sticker books, you know. And Bud That Buddy was the first, that was as close as I had ever seen myself as in a book. And I was 35 maybe, identifying with an 8-year-old, you know, named Bud. And that was kind of how it started. And then they started reading on their own, like Geronimo Stilton and Mythomania and that kind of thing. And then they became gamers, but I subscribed to Game Informer magazine. So that came, they read that cover to cover.
Me too.
Right, right. And they're like, Dad, the new such and such is coming out, and here's the game designer, and here's the this, and here's the this. I'm like, okay. But, you know, so I fed into that, whereas my teachers in 7th and 8th grade, as I told you, told us that comic books would rot our brains, so they would take them from us. So, you know, they would confiscate our comics. So early on, in my mind, fun reading meant it was illegal. And that real reading meant that you had to suffer through it. And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Reading was like suffering for me.
Yeah, it was a job.
It was a job.
Yeah.
That came with homework. The library was like going to a morgue. You know, there was just nothing fun about it. So how I'm this guy,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird.
No, it's great. I think you sort of have to come to it from an outside perspective, right? If you, I'm sure you take a lot of care in your books because you know what it is to not want to read.
Yeah.
So it does come across, and it does. I think it's well earned, right? And you saw the 2 stickers on, but not but,
Right.
and sought to outdo.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a
Go
goal.
for the track.
Right, but then to get those 2 stickers and the Kirkus, it was like, I didn't even know I could dream that big.
Yeah.
Why would I? Like, because again, you know, even the characters I identified with, like Fat Albert, they played in the junkyard. You know, so there was no one living their best life. There was no one that I wanted to emulate, you know, like that.
So I guess I want to talk to you about writing a book, writing your books specifically. Since you do it all, soup to nuts, where do you start? For school trip, you know, you knew you wanted to do another book with the same characters.
Right.
How do you decide where to take them? And then when do you illustrate it first? Do you write out the story and then go back?
School Trip was different because it's potentially the last book of the series.
Yeah, you have to leave that door open for me.
Yeah, because you know what? So my good friend Katie, she asked me, I said, well, wait until the thing. And she's like, is this the last one? And it's supposed to be, but like originally my publisher HarperCollins was like, well, we don't want to have character story fatigue, right? And in other words, like, you know, you just where else you're welcome. I'm like, oh yeah, because kids hate it when a new Dogman comes out. Literally, I looked at some book lists the other day, and it was like the bestsellers, and it was like Dogman, 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 Cat Kid, Dogman, School Trip, Dogman. It's like, wow, I'm in Dave Pilkey territory. That's pretty impressive. And it really didn't work out too well with that Jeff Kinney guy. He would be kidding.
And 18 books later.
Right. You know, so like, but I guess since this is a little bit more realistic, like one of the pitfalls would be that people think something has to happen, you know? And I like to think that the characters are loved enough where I could just have them going to a baseball game, going to a picnic, and then there would just be like little things. But there's sometimes, like with New Kid, they were like, nothing happens. I'm like, enough happens. But again, we're trained that you put the candle by the curtains, and right, and then the house burns down, you know, or you go on a school trip, and then as soon as Jordan is in Paris, Dad calls up, he's like, hey, son, how's Paris? Oh, great, how you feeling, Dad? Oh, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Right. Next thing, Jordan is on the next plane back, and there's a funeral scene with Jordan with the umbrella in the rain. And it's like it just never is happy. So with New Kid, there was no pressure because no one knew me or anything about the book. So I did really what I wanted to do. Class Act, it followed the book that went in Newbery, but I had already had it written for the most part, so there wasn't pressure. So with this one, it was like, how do you follow New Kid and Class Act? It had to be the same enough where the stuff that you love is there, but it had to be different enough so that, it was worth reading. And I knew people like, oh, you should do one where there's like a school shooting and no. I'm like, are you kidding me? No. And Jordan leads it, and they protest. I'm like, no. Okay. And so I realized that there are people that like, something has to happen because again, you're trained to think that way. And so I would have to find, so with this, I said, let's have all the same characters. I'm not going to change the characters, but I'll change the setting. And I'll move them to Paris for a week. And I thought that that was a really good compromise to have something new, but still have it familiar.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So I'm curious, is there anything that you've tried to make work in these books? Anything that you're, you have a Newbery, so I'm sure your editors can't tell you anything. It's like Stephen King, once he's so big, he's no one will edit him. That's why all of his books are 1,001 pages. Is there anything you've tried to make work in one of your graphic novels that you couldn't figure out how to do it, or anything that you had to take out because it didn't fit tonally?
In the first New Kid, there was a black girl in it. And so when I listened to parents and, they had girls like, oh, and they were really like touching their hair and doing this and doing that. And it was too much feeling like it was just overwhelming. And so I actually got rid of that character. Oh, maybe I'll bring it back in. And I never did just because all the scenes were kind of like touching the hair and, and then she cut her hair and then she wanted to straighten her hair. Like that would be a whole nother.
Yeah, it's an undertaking.
Yeah.
To say the least, yeah.
So I didn't want to do that. Originally, my plan was to do, like when I went to Fieldston in Riverdale, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and Harvard Collins was like, we don't want to do 9th, that's too old. Like a 5th grader would read about a 7th grader, but wouldn't want to read about a 12th grader. I was like, yeah, but that's how I did. I'm so happy that they said that.
Yeah.
Because, if I did a 12th grader, like, would you really want to see Andy in the 12th grade?
No.
You know what I mean? Because if they're, I would have to have like a party, and then if they're seniors, then someone
treat them like seniors, like they would.
So, right, something would have to happen, right? Or else it'd be, oh, nothing happens. That's not a realistic portrayal of seniors. But then if I did, like, I just like the middle grade innocence. So I like 7th grade, 8th grade. So New Kid was all of 7th grade. Class Act was 7th grade up until April. And then School Trip is April through June. And I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, no, I think it works very well. It's a very, it's an important time in a kid's life, and the stakes, the house doesn't have to burn up for things at that age to be
Right.
high stakes.
Right.
Like it is going to a new school where you don't know anyone.
Right.
That is high stakes. And my son is in 8th grade, and he and his best friend are going to separate schools for the first time since 3rd, and the stakes are high.
Right. And that's why I always say to kids, it's like, my biggest fear in life is to come back as a dad or a mom in the Disney cartoon. Because like somewhere, like the Little Mermaid's mom is hanging out with Mufasa, who's hanging out with Bambi's mom, who's with Dumbo's mom, who's insane, and Tarzan's parents. And I'm like, can the kids just have an adventure and then go home for dinner? Does it always have to be that heavy a thing?
Yeah, that's how I guess people know to create tension. The Disney movies gave it to us.
Yeah, but does it have to end in tragedy?
I say no, but I do then read a bunch of books with kids who, page 1, they are overcoming their parents, or page 15, they lose one.
Yeah, I'm like, so I would say that with one of my books, you don't have to peek to the end to see if the characters are gonna live. They're gonna live.
Yeah.
Like the very first thing that the Tarzan one, like his parents get mauled by a leopard. And then Finding Nemo, like I kept waiting for all his 300 brothers and sisters to come back at the end, like, hey, we're here, we'll just hide under a rock.
We got you.
Right, and I kept waiting, and then the credits roll up, I'm like, they're really dead? All like, again, that's not, and he never thought twice, like, oh yeah, now I've got 300 rooms in the house to myself, 300 baseball gloves, like, they never look back at like, wow,
I lost a lot.
Yeah, I lost a lot. I'm only fish now. Yeah. And I don't know why it has to do that. It could have just been a shark chasing him without all of us, or they do hide and then come back. And I don't understand why it's got to be so great.
So much of a downer.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
So I'm interested in what the next series is gonna be with your son.
So, being that you're in the industry, I can't tell you.
I have retired. She said she's, I have retired.
Yeah, but.
No, just a general feeling.
Well, so here's what's weird. Like, I don't want to make a living as the banned book guy, because generally, like, my sense of humor is silly. Like, I love to play around and laugh and stuff like that, I prank call Katie, and stuff. And so, like, that's my sense of humor, So I didn't intend to ever be that guy on NPR, But then it's like, if I do like a dog man, I don't want people to be disappointed because they're like, what happened to you, man?
Yeah.
You used to be edgy. You lost your edge. I'm like, So I am trying really hard to kind of figure out what I can do that still has my content and like my teachable moments and, but without getting me on Maury Povich.
Yes, is that an upgrade or?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
From NPR to
Yes.
Maury Povich.
Amy?
Please.
Now that you are in this world of children's literature, who are the authors that you admire their work?
Definitely not Kwame Alexander. I don't know how we do this, but it's like, he started it, and it's like, well, Kwame started it. You know what, like, what's so funny is, I've been doing this for so long. Like, I self-published my first book in 1997, and I've self-published 25 books, and working with other authors to help them publish their books because they couldn't get published. And so I didn't just become the new kid guy. So when I became that guy, I didn't notice it. It was weird. So I would come to ALA, the Scholastic. So, we were just reminiscing about the Scholastic Book Fair. So we had the one in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I didn't know anything about it. I saw that it was Jared Kashowska, right? Jared Kashowska as Hey Kiddo was going to be there, and I liked him. And so I call up a writer, hi, my name is Jerry Kraft, and if it's okay, can I come to the Scholastic Book Fair because, I'll sit in the back of the room and I won't bother anyone. And meanwhile, they're like, Jerry Kraft wants to come to our book fair. Of course. And I was like, And then I go in and I'm just kind of, and they call me up on stage and I was like, oh, that's different, you know? And so it was weird to like start getting that notoriety and like even going like an ALA or TLA, which is these big, and all the big book fairs are there. And I used to be like, excuse me, can I just see that book? No, you have to come back on Sunday. Where we sell them for $5. And now I like go and people are like, you Jericho, and then they just start throwing books at me. Here, take this, and can you write a cover blurb for this? And take that, and here. And now I come home with 5,000 books, you know.
Oh, I've been to a conference, not as a famous person, but I've been to a conference. I've come back. I always come back.
Right. I used to go to BEA and like have to go to a chiropractor the next day because you stand online and you like, you know. So the funny thing is, like on Facebook, you get those bing, 10 years ago, this is what you were doing. And I was like, oh, I remember being on that panel. Okay, so Zena Elliott, and was that really watching? And like, oh, that tall guy was Jason Reynolds. That's cool. Well, I didn't, you know, because we were both selling books out the trunk of our car. Or going to do this other thing. And it was like, oh, yeah, that guy that I did that Zoom at Q-Man was Kwame Alexander. You know, and then I did the Hudson Children's Book Fair, and they have a breakfast for the authors every morning. And I saw, you know, a Black couple there, and there's not a lot of us. I was like, hey, come join us. I'm sitting there, we're talking, and again, since I wasn't a reader, I didn't grow up with author heroes. And then, so we have our pancakes, and like, okay, so I'm Jerry Crabb, pleased to meet you, and your name again? Oh, Jacqueline Woodson, but you can call me Jackie. Oh, hi Jackie, pleased to meet you. And your name? Walter D. Myers. Hey, Mr. Myers, pleased to meet you. And I go back and Google him, I'm like,
Oh, this is royalty.
I'm like, oh, yeah. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, and then so I backtrack and then like try to do all that stuff. I'm like, oh, that was Jackie Woodson.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else? Any questions?
What do
Please.
your kids think of like your fame? Are they like embarrassed by it, or do they think it's cool? Do their friends like talk about you?
So originally, you know, because we were driving, again, my sister was very silly, and they used to always tease me, oh, those corny dad jokes, those dad jokes. And one day I was like, you know, these dad jokes bought that PlayStation. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay. And then our self-published book, The Offenders, that they co-wrote with me, The Offenders, Save the World While Serving Detention. And this author saw the book and liked it and said, hey, I'm opening up a new bookstore. Why don't you and your sons be some of the first authors to sign in our store? I was like, okay, I'm going to help him out, you know, because, you know, we're struggling authors, he's a struggling author. And I don't take a lot of credit for stuff that I actually do, but after me and my sons signed at his store, his Wimpy Kids series really took off. That Jeff Kennedy is now a household name. You know, so, you know, my kids now, they get to spend a day with their second favorite author,
Yeah.
right?
And their
So-
first is Jacqueline Woodson.
Say what thing. The guy that bought them the PlayStation. But you know, so like once they started meeting, like, hey, oh, what'd you do today? Oh, we hung out with Jeff Kennedy. Yeah, me and my dad. Yeah, we did the TV show, or we did, you know, and then like the biggest thing. So there's two really big things. When they had those book vending machines JetBlue did a pilot series, no pun intended, and I did a video with Jacqueline Woodson, my close personal friend, Jacqueline Woodson. So whenever there was a JetBlue flight, after they did the things would drop down and have to put on your seatbelt and all that, they showed a video with me and Jackie Wood. So everyone that flew that week, and it was like spring break, so all their friends were going places, like, was that your dad? And then the biggest one was, there was two things. One was, I went to, what's that one? The big convention that it's all the independent booksellers. Winter Institute?
Yeah.
I went to Winter Institute.
Right.
And and I met Kobe. And so it was so funny. So, there's 1,000 people with Kobe Bryant. And I went over and his handler was there, and I said, "Oh, I just wanted to give Kobe a copy." Like, well, the book just came out. And I said, "Oh, okay." And he gets up, and then he starts leaving, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then the woman goes, "Oh, wait, come on." And he goes, "Kobe, your friend is coming." I'm like, "Okay." So now I'm down the entourage, and we go down the escalator, and we get to his table, and there's like 25,000 people online. Like, well, it was nice. And she goes, come on, sit down. And I sit down first, and okay, here's my book. I just want to autograph this to you. I said, can I get a selfie? Yeah. Hands were shaking, and I don't remember anything else. And I leave, and I look at the picture, and he's holding a new kid up like that. And then, like, the next year, he tweeted to his 14 million followers, "Hey, congratulations to my guys, Jason Reynolds and Jerry Craft, for being longlisted on the National Book Award." And I'm like, two things, one, Kobe is tweeting me, his boys, and two, I'm on the long list for the National Book Award. Which turned out not to be true. But I'm like, look, if Kobe said it, it's true.
It lives on the internet.
It lives on it. So everything on the internet we know is true, right? And then the other thing is, one time LeBron tweeted some Instagram story, and it was like the one day in my life that I was on social media. So the stories disappear after 24 hours. So no one told us, but my son's phone was just off the hook. Was that your dad and LeBron? So then ever since then, and so now I did the Daily Show last week, and I brought my sons down, and they were in the green room and hanging out, and Roy Wood Jr. came in. So now they get it, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's what my dad does.
Excellent. Any more questions? I do want you to draw for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a bit. It's such a treat to see. If you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so one of the things is that when I do draw, so should I do the whole thing that I do with the kids?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the secret is how do the kids keep that I can do it thing? Because I always say, so kids were high school today, right? About 8th, 9th grade. And I always say, if you were in kindergarten, I would give you crayons, and I would say, draw an elephant on a skateboard eating ice cream. And they would do it. And kids look, I did it, isn't it good? And it's scribbles, and you can't tell what's going on, but they think they did a good job. And then 3rd grade, I'm like, okay, just draw a circle. I can't do a circle, it's too hard. 5th grade, just draw a straight line. I can't do a straight line, it's too hard. Then by 8th grade, just write your name on the paper. I don't know what my name is, it's too hard. And everything's, I can't. And then so kids will get up, and I'm like, look, just draw a circle. And with an attitude, they'll just be like, see, I told you I couldn't do it. And I'm like, well, yeah, you didn't try. And then they'll just be like, and then they'll just, oh yeah, that's better now, And I have literally like taken stuff out the garbage, and then the kids will just start doing more and more and more, right? And so by the end, it's completely ruined. And I have taken stuff out the garbage, and I'm like, okay, listen. First off, it's not a mistake. Relax. I'm like, this is not your job. It's my job. I'm the one working. So if anyone should be upset, right? And then I said, but look, I'll take this and just do a couple little things to it, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, see, you kind of did it. No, you did it. I'm like, you did it. And then just by putting little things on there, that it's not like just a mistake all the time. Like, it's not always the end of the world where, every little thing that they do has to be judged so harshly. And I've seen kids breaking pencils and balling the stuff up and, things like that. And then so I'll take something like this. And then it's like, okay, look, the other thing is circles are hard to do. So, I can't come up and do a good circle. And I'll just come up with some, okay, no laughing. And then okay, well, maybe I can do a good circle. That's a pretty good circle. But then when I do that, like I show them things that I can do that's just like, okay, once I have the circle of just like, now it's kind of like a teardrop. And then I'll put like a smile, and then have like a hairpin kind of thing, right? And then there's all these like little lines, little by little, that you just take, and because I look at stuff and how to break it down, right? And then once I have this, then I go over it, and I do that, and then, so it's all about like, do you think you can do it? Because again, if you don't, you're always going to be right, And at what point do kids lose that whole I can't do it, from I can do anything to now I can't, And I just show them the little shapes that you add here, little shapes that you add there, And then slowly but surely, like the little shapes you can put stuff, this is like a rectangle, And, not everything is perfect, but at least try it. And so many kids now, they don't even try it. Even the ones who are artists, you look at their sketchbook and nothing is finished. It's just like, this page has a hand, and I don't like it. Next page. This has half a face. I don't like the nose. Next page. I'm like, finish it. And then if you don't like it, you can always go back and say, oh, well, you know what? I don't like this because the eyes are too big, but the next time I do it, I'll make the eyes smaller, or I can do this, or I can do that. So it's not just about, if it's going to be perfect, because I even look back now at New Kid, and there's some things that I wish that I had drawn differently, but because I draw like 15 hours a day for a year and a half, to do one of these books. And, so when I do it, of course, by the time I'm done, I'm going to be better than when I started. And then when I work on book 2, that's going to be even better than book 1. And I hope that every book that I do, people will think is better than the last. So I hope that people think that School Trip is even better than the New Kid. So, you have this kind of thing, and then when you put like the whole background, you can do stuff, and you can put fish in here, and then by the time you finish it, it's a whole scene, I put seashells down here. So if I was doing this professionally, I would probably end up doing like a lot of shells, a crab coming out of a hole, and like that kind of stuff. So that's like when I am showing kids, it's like, relax, it's not that bad. And then when I draw the new kid characters, when I created Jordan, so here's the thing, from an African-American perspective, I grew up in the 70s where most of the characters I identified with were like Partridge Family, the Brady Bunch, because that's what was there, right? So I'm identifying with Danny Partridge and Peter Brady and, that kind. And it really never went, in a lot of ways I had more in common with them than JJ from Good Times. You know what I mean? First of all, for a show called Good Times, they never had any good times. Like, did they ever have any good? Really? So it's one of those where it's like, again, it makes you think early on that that's all there is to life is suffering, for us. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to have, African-American characters that everybody could relate to, because it never goes the opposite way, because if I can't identify with a book on Frederick Douglass, that's not a good book or an important book, but I'm not gonna say, I'm gonna grow up to be Frederick Douglass. So if I didn't do that, I know you didn't do that, So, like, what Black character would you have ever identified with in a book, And probably none, And obviously now it's much better. So when I was talking to Harper, initially they were saying that in the second book, that it should be in the same universe as New Kid, but not necessarily the same characters. And I was like, well, I think you were right by not having me do 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. But I think you're wrong when it comes to this, because I wanted to do iconic characters so that when, you're talking about these great middle grade characters, and you have all the Raina and Child Myers characters, and you have Greg Heffley from Wimpy Kid, and you have, Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, that then there would finally be, someone like Jordan and Drew. So when I came up with the name, I thought that the name Jordan was a good choice because it could be a boy's name, it could be a girl's name, it could be a first name, it could be a last name, so everyone could kind of relate to that. So I thought that that was pretty cool, right? So I started off with Jordan. And then I wanted to do Liam. And Liam was interesting because I knew that I had to do a white character. And I was so nervous about, could I do a book, especially a graphic novel about a young Black kid, because I had never seen it. And, what, actually, now I think about it, an African-American kid as a star of a series that wasn't Miles Morales, it's kind of tough, right? And so, coming up, now there's Leon and Stunt Boy, and there's some really cool characters. So I didn't know if I could do that. So in the back of my mind, I had one like, well, maybe the book has to be about Liam. And it's all about him having a Black friend in school, because maybe they won't let me do a book, you know, but this is also why I had to self-publish for so long, because there wasn't but so much that I wanted to change, you know. And then I said, okay, so with Liam, I'm gonna make him come from a wealthy family, but just like I was trying to get away from stereotypes for Black and brown characters, I didn't want to stereotype anyone. So when I was younger, all the rich kids in movies were played by James Spader,
Yes.
right? He was the rich kid in every single movie. If you did a movie with a rich kid, you had the contraction called James Spader. And Anthony Michael Hall would be sitting there eating an ice cream, and James Spader would drive up in his Corvette, and his cardigan was tied around his shoulder, right? And he'd just come over and just slap the ice cream out and pick it up and just, and he'd walk over and go, I'm rich. And like that was it, right? He was horrible.
He's horrible to everybody.
He's horrible to everybody. And so I said, okay, I want to do this kid who is wealthy, but almost kind of embarrassed by his family's wealth and kind of the antithesis of James Spader. So I wanted to do, so that's where I got Liam from. And then, of course, when I get my, you know, people, well, how come, you know, you have, like, all the white kids are rich? I'm like, no, but it goes to show that in this school, you know, that the tuition is probably 50 grand a year. You're either going to be very well off or you're going to be on financial aid. There really is not a lot of in between. I lived that, right? And so then they're like, well, how come he's rich, but, you know, he doesn't have a good relationship with his father, but Jordan does. Like, he can't have everything. Like, this is what makes an interesting character. When you really want him to have everything, you know? And then it was like, so, you know, they didn't like the fact that all the white kids were rich, whatever. So when school trip came around, for those of you who see it, I made Maury the richest kid of all of them. So now we have an African American kid who's the richest kid of all. So let's see how you like that, you know. And now with Drew, you know, I think that he had an interesting play with Jordan because, you know, he's bigger and he's got dark skin and, you know, more masculine features. So he is seen as more, you know, where Jordan is always non-threatening. You know, Drew is just not treated the same by, you know, Miss Roll, everyone's favorite Miss Roll, and different people, because, you know, he just looks, so they have a different preconceived notion. So I knew that I wanted to take these three kids from really different backgrounds and make them three of the nicest kids that you can imagine, but just have them work out their own stuff, you know. So originally, Jordan was going to meet Drew first. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to have him meet Liam first and hang out with Liam. And then by the time he gets to know Drew, then all of a sudden he has to choose. Can he be Drew's friend? Can he be Liam's friend? Can he be both of their friends? And I really kind of like the fact that they ended up being like, you know, the Three Musketeers kind of thing. And then, you know, other characters such as Alexandra, I did because of her sock puppets, because knowing that the book had a lot of talk of race or class, that it could be seen as heavy. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was do a book that would end up being bad. Well, so I added her, right? But then I actually felt bad that the other characters kind of teased her. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna give her more of a backstory. And then the more backstory I gave her, then I ended up really liking her. So she ended up becoming one of my favorite characters. And to me, the book, a New Kid book isn't complete unless Alexandria has like a big scene in it with either Drew or Jordan or somebody. Yep, and that's kind of it.
Thank you so much, everyone. If you haven't already gotten your book signed, or if you haven't gotten all of the books that you want to take home with you, Jerry will set up here and sign, and we will gladly sell them. Thank you so much for coming out. I love doing these. I appreciate you all, and utilize your library. And I'll see you at the left bank.
Any selfies while I'm here till, what time do I have to leave to catch my flight? 6. All right. If I miss that flight, then this poor man has to drive me to Decatur, Georgia tomorrow.